Gennaro, could you give us a quick overview of the security settings in JAMS?
Certainly, Dave. The security in JAMS can best be described as having four parts or four major layers. The first one of those being at the actual JAMS scheduler server. So this definition here allows you to provide that connection. So if a user was to install the client on their machine and they tried to add the server here and connect the client to the scheduler, but they didn't have access here, then they wouldn't be able to connect to the scheduler to view the jobs. The second part that you would probably want to look at next is adding access to the folder definitions, which would give a user or group access to the folder structure here at the left. Now, this will give a user or a group access to the entire structure. So these permissions here apply to all of the folders. And you have various permissions at whether you want to add a folder, change a folder, just simply view a folder. This is the top level security for the entire folder structure. Next, if you're going to be giving someone access to folders and they need to see the jobs in any of those folders, you need to move on to the job definitions section, where you would add a user or a group that would have access to specific permissions to the jobs in those folders. So you would go there next. If you want that person to view the jobs in the monitor, you'll want to take a look at that after that. So you add users or groups here to be able to describe which functions that they'll have within the monitor view, whether you want them to be able to see all of the jobs or see their own jobs or to cancel a jobs. Manage jobs is to allow them to put a job on hold or to release a job, that sort of thing. After you have that defined, you will want to go to the second level, which can be described as the permissions on the folders and the jobs themselves. So if we take a look at the properties of one of the folders here and go to the security tab, you can see that we can assign specific permissions to the folder structure. And this gives us specific permissions to what we can do to the folders and subsequently the jobs and other objects within that folder. So these permissions will be inherited by all of the objects within it. After you set the Active Directory users and groups at the folder level, if you want to get more granular, you can assign those same permissions to the job themselves. So you can add additional access control entries there if you would like. You go into the Security tab and you can add additional Active Directory users and groups, but you see that we can inherit the Active Directory permissions, or the groups rather, that we set at the folder level. The third level can be described as the users that would be executing the jobs. So we can assign a user to execute a specific job, and each of these users has their own set of security permissions on them as well. So we can define who has access to submit a job with this set of credentials, or get the password in plain text if we need to have that functionality. And then that would make it so that you can have a non-administrative user submit a job that with a set of credentials that would normally have administrative access. And you won't have to give them the actual username and password and have an insecure situation. Lastly, the last level, the fourth level, could be described as sort of the backdoor into JAMS, and that is in the configuration section. We have two configuration entries that would describe that. The first one being grant administrator bypass, which this is set to true by default, so that anyone running the client as a local administrator on their workstation will have complete access to JAMS. So anyone who can do a right click and run the client as an administrator, we will grant them complete access to JAMS and override any other security settings that we have defined. The grant bypass group configuration item allows us to specify a list or a single Active Directory group that would have complete access to jams. And I would really recommend configuring an administrative group so that you basically just add users to that administrative group instead of having to go through each section and add the administrative group to each portion of jams and take up a lot more of your time. It's much easier if you just add the group or groups that you want to have administrative access and then forget about it and then worry about all of the non-administrative people after that. So that is all that I have for the security functionality within jams. All right, great. I'm glad you asked this question, Dave.